No one in my family showed up to my husband's funeral, not even my parents or my closest friend. They all chose my sister's engagement party instead. But as we lowered the casket, my phone suddenly lit up with a text from my mom. "We need to talk right now," followed by 36 missed calls. Could you ever imagine standing completely alone at your husband's funeral, utterly abandoned by your own blood family and your lifelong best friend? Because that's exactly where I found myself, shattered, staring at 3 empty chairs, realizing the people I loved most were circling like vultures even before he took his last breath. What I discovered that day, and in the agonizing weeks before, didn't just change my life, it ripped apart everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and the true meaning of love. My name is Cassandra Mitchell, I'm 32 years old, and I'm here to tell you my story. Bobby and I met 5 years ago, in the most cliched way possible. I literally crashed into him at a coffee shop. I was a nurse, rushing to my shift after a double, bone-tired, and bam! My latte went all over his jacket. Instead of getting angry, he just laughed. "Well," he said, with those warm brown eyes sparkling, "that's one way to warm up on a cold morning." That was Bobby, always finding the light. He asked for my number, and to my own surprise, I gave it to him. Something about him just put me at ease. Our first date stretched for hours. He was a firefighter, wanted to help people since he was a kid. I was a nurse, dedicated to the same mission. We just clicked. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Bobby proposed on a hike, at our favorite lookout point. The ring was simple, his grandmother's solitaire, but to me, it was perfect. "I don't have much," he told me, "but everything I am is yours." My parents, not thrilled. My mom's first question, "What's his salary, Cassandra? Firefighting isn't exactly a lucrative career." That disapproving tone, I knew it well. My father was even blunter, "You could do better." They'd always envisioned me with a doctor, a lawyer, someone who could provide the lifestyle they thought I deserved. But Bobby gave me something invaluable, unconditional love and unwavering support. He cheered me through my critical care certification, brought me dinner during endless study nights, and made me laugh even on my worst days. Stephanie, my best friend since childhood, seemed supportive at first. She was my maid of honor. But even she made a snide comment about our modest wedding venue. What she didn't get was that Bobby and I wanted something intimate, something that reflected us, not some social statement for my parents. We bought a small craftsman house, a fixer-upper. Bobby promised we'd grow old on that front porch, coffee in hand. We spent weekends painting, refinishing floors, building our home, one project at a time. We talked about kids, about our future, so full of hope. He'd come home from the firehouse with stories that had me alternating between laughter and tears, and I'd share the small victories and heartbreaks from the ICU. We understood each other's world, the irregular hours, the emotional toll, the patients who stay with you forever. My parents, though, kept Bobby at arm's length. Polite, but cool. Conversations were stiff. Bobby tried so hard, bringing thoughtful gifts, asking genuine questions. But they never truly opened up. Stephanie visited often, but her comments about our modest lifestyle or Bobby's dangerous job started grating. Then, about 2 years into our marriage, things shifted. Bobby started getting these brutal headaches. Not ordinary ones, but intense, waking him up in the night pain. He brushed it off, stress, dehydration. Typical Bobby, downplaying anything that might worry me. But then he called from work, his speech slurred. He was feeling off, coming home early. That was so unlike him. I knew. Something was seriously wrong. He finally agreed to see a doctor. Even on the way, he was joking, probably just all those spicy wings catching up to me. That was the last normal day. The last day before our in sickness and in health vows were truly put to the test. I was in the medroom at work when my phone buzzed. Bobby's captain. My heart dropped. Calls from the firehouse during the day never meant anything good. "Cassandra, it's Captain Miller. Bobby collapsed during morning checks. Paramedics are taking him to Mercy General." I don't remember dropping the medication tray. I don't remember my supervisor telling me to go. The next clear memory. sprinting through the ER doors, still in my scrubs, frantically searching. They'd already taken him for a CT scan. I paced, desperate, calling my parents, Stephanie, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Stephanie called back, promising to be right there. My parents. They eventually texted that they were tied up with an important dinner, but sent prayers. Prayers. When the neurologist finally found me, her face told me everything before she spoke. A large mass. Glioblastoma. Grade 4. The most aggressive. Terminal. With treatment, she said gently, we're looking at maybe 12 to 15 months. I'm so sorry. My world spun. 12 to 15 months. Less than the time we'd spent renovating our kitchen. Less than the time we'd been married. Not even enough time for the children we'd talked about. I felt Stephanie's arm around my shoulders as I collapsed, but her comfort felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. Bobby faced the news with a bravery that humbled me. When I finally saw him, post-biopsy, his head stapled, his first words were, "Hey, beautiful. Don't look so worried. We've got this." He was comforting me. The first few weeks were a blur: appointments, treatment plans, paperwork, radiation, chemo, experimental protocols. Bobby attacked it all with fierce determination, researching options, asking intelligent questions. He impressed his medical team. Stephanie initially stepped up. Homemade meals, sitting with Bobby so I could shower. "That's what best friends do," she said, hugging me. "You do the same for me." My parents made one awkward hospital visit. My mom flinched at Bobby's surgical scars. My dad immediately brought up practicalities. Insurance coverage. Disability. Your mortgage. You might need to sell the house if this goes on too long. Not unkindly, but with that pragmatic focus he always had. Bobby, even weakened, squeezed my hand. "We've got good insurance," he said, his voice firm. "And I've always been careful with our savings. Cassandra won't have to worry." I took a leave of absence, used all my vacation and FMLA. I became his full-time caregiver. Our living room transformed into a medical bay. I learned to administer treatments, manage symptoms, translate medical jargon. The radiation made him violently ill. The steroids bloated his face and body until he barely resembled the vital man I married. Through it all, he remained unfailingly kind, apologizing when he couldn't make it to the bathroom, or when pain made him short-tempered. "You shouldn't have to do this," he whispered one night as I changed his sheets for the third time. "You should be out living your life, not playing nurse to a dying man." I climbed into bed beside him, careful of his lines. "This is exactly where I want to be," I told him, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. "For better or worse, remember." The financial strain mounted fast. Copays, specialized meds, adaptive equipment. Bobby's firefighter brotherhood organized fundraisers, but the costs were endless. When Stephanie saw me calculating bills one evening, she offered to lend us money. "I got that bonus," she said. "Let me help. You can pay me back when things settle down." Grateful and exhausted, I accepted her $3,000. It covered a special mattress, some out-of-network consults. It was the first time I'd ever borrowed from her, and something about it felt off. I couldn't say why then. As weeks bled into months, a subtle shift began. Stephanie's daily visits became every few days, then weekly. Her texts were full of excuses: work, car trouble, family. My parents called occasionally, always asking about practical matters, never about how we were coping emotionally. 6 months into Bobby's treatment, the news we dreaded arrived. The tumor was growing. His oncologist recommended a new chemo, but her eyes held little hope. Bobby remained determined to fight, but I saw the realization in his eyes. We were running out of options. That night, as he slept fitfully, I wept silently for the future we were losing. The children we'd never have, the anniversaries we wouldn't celebrate, the growing old together stolen from us. What I didn't yet understand was that cancer wasn't the only thing I was about to lose. The true betrayal was just beginning. As Bobby's condition worsened, our circle grew smaller. The firehouse guys kept coming, bringing food, mowing the lawn, fixing things. But our personal relationships, they started to fray. I first noticed it when I borrowed Stephanie's phone. Mine was charging to call the pharmacy. A text notification popped up. From my mother. Have you talked to Cassandra about what we discussed? Time is running out. My finger hovered. A sick feeling curled in my stomach. I gave her the phone back, telling myself it was probably a surprise or some practical help. A week later, that comforting illusion shattered. Stephanie was on our back porch, taking a call. She didn't realize the window was cracked. I've tried bringing it up, she whispered. But it's never the right time. She's completely devoted to him. No, I don't think she's thinking clearly about the future at all. Yes, I agree. She needs to start making plans for after. The word hung in the air like a physical blow. After. They were already planning for his death, treating it as a foregone conclusion, while we were still fighting with everything we had. That night, after Bobby was settled, I checked our joint bank account. Bobby's savings, money he'd put away for years, had dwindled. Medical bills were devouring everything. But what alarmed me were withdrawals I didn't recognize, including one for the exact amount I'd borrowed from Stephanie, dated the day after she'd given me the money. Had exhaustion blurred my memory? Maybe. But a nagging doubt persisted. The next day, Stephanie showed up with coffee and pastries, first time in weeks. She seemed unusually interested in our finances. Have you thought about what you'll do with the house? She asked casually. It's a lot of space for just one person. Bobby is still here, I said sharply. We're not having this conversation. She backpedaled fast. Of course. I just meant, eventually. Practical considerations. Your parents mentioned you might move back home for a while after. There it was again. After. And now I knew my parents were involved. My parents mentioned. I echoed, my voice tight. When exactly are you discussing me with my parents? She flushed. We all concerned about you, Cass. We want to make sure you're taken care of when, if, things don't go well. 2 days later, an envelope of cash was missing from Bobby's desk drawer. Money his fire department colleagues had collected to help with expenses. When I mentioned it to Stephanie, she suggested I'd misplaced it. Caregiver fatigue is real, she said, with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're exhausted. Maybe it's time to consider a care facility for Bobby. Insurance might cover it, and you could get your life back. Get my life back. As if my life with Bobby, even in his illness, was something to escape from. It was the most important thing in my world. That evening, Bobby noticed my distraction. Even with his cognitive decline, he was so perceptive. What's going on in that beautiful mind? He asked, his speech slightly slurred. I couldn't burden him with my suspicions. The idea that people we trusted might be taking advantage of us was too painful to voice. Instead, I told him a partial truth. I'm just noticing that some people aren't handling your illness well. They're pulling away. Bobby nodded slowly. People get scared when they can't fix something. It reminds them of their own mortality. He squeezed my hand with what little strength he had left. But you stayed. You're all I need, Cassandra. The betrayals kept accumulating. My mother called to suggest I safeguard valuables before Bobby needed live-in care. Stephanie borrowed my car and returned it with an empty tank. A check from Bobby's union benefit fund arrived and mysteriously vanished from our mail pile during one of Stephanie's visits. 8 months after Bobby's diagnosis, I finally confronted Stephanie. She'd cancelled 3 consecutive visits, each with more elaborate excuses. When she finally showed up with a flimsy story about car trouble, I invited her into the kitchen while Bobby napped. I need to ask you something, I said, setting down 2 cups of coffee. The money you lent us. Did you take it back from our account? Her expression flickered, surprise, then guilt, then a practiced concern. Cassandra, what are you talking about? Why would I do that? Because the exact amount was withdrawn the next day, and I didn't make that withdrawal. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. Honey, you're not thinking clearly. The stress is getting to you. Maybe you used it for one of Bobby's treatments and forgot. It happens. And the envelope of cash. The benefit check. Did I forget about those too? Her face hardened slightly. Are you accusing me of stealing from you? After everything I've done to help? Before I could respond, Bobby called weakly from the bedroom. As I rose, Stephanie grabbed her purse. I think we both need some space, she said. Call me when you're feeling more yourself. She didn't visit again for 3 weeks. By then, Bobby's lucid moments were rare treasures. The tumor was pressing on his brain, affecting his speech, his mobility, his recognition. But in his clear moments, his love remained steadfast. He would look at me with those same warm brown eyes and whisper, "Still the best thing that ever happened to me." My isolation deepened. Work friends stopped checking in. Their discomfort with prolonged illness created an invisible barrier. My parents called less, their questions always about practicalities, never emotional support. And Stephanie, when she did appear, seemed to be inventorying our possessions with her eyes, as if already deciding what might be of value. What they didn't understand, what they couldn't comprehend, was that despite everything, I wouldn't have traded a single day with Bobby. Even in the worst moments, his courage and kindness shone through. The way he apologized for not remembering a word. How he still tried to make me laugh with jokes he struggled to deliver. His insistence on celebrating our anniversary, presenting me with a hand-drawn card that simply said, "Forever." As winter turned to spring, I finally grasped it. The betrayal wasn't just about money or possessions. It was about people already erasing Bobby while he was still fighting to live, and expecting me to do the same. By the 11th month, Bobby's oncologist confirmed what we already knew. Treatments were no longer effective. Hospice was our next step. I'd like to transition to home hospice, I told the doctor, Bobby's hand, limp but warm in mine. He wants to be in our house, in our bed. The hospice team arrived the next day. Maria, an angel of a nurse. They transformed our bedroom into a peaceful space. Call your family, Maria advised gently. Now is the time for goodbyes. I called my parents. Dad, I said to his voicemail, my voice breaking. The doctors say it's time. If you and Mom want to say goodbye to Bobby, you should come in the next few days. He called back the next morning. Your mother and I have that charity gala this weekend, but we'll try to stop by early next week. How are the finances holding up? Have you spoken with the life insurance company yet? The question struck me like a physical blow. He's not dead yet, Dad. Of course, dear. Just being practical. You'll have arrangements to make soon. I hung up. Stephanie next. Oh, Cass, she said, her voice appropriately somber. I'll be there tomorrow, I promise. Do you need me to bring anything? Have you thought about funeral homes yet? Another person, leaping ahead, bypassing the sacred time we still had. Just come say goodbye, I said flatly. But the next day, Stephanie texted. Work emergency, would come next weekend. My parents left a voicemail, scheduling conflict with their country club event. As the people who should have been there disappeared, Bobby began the final stage of his journey with quiet dignity. There were moments of confusion, fear, but also moments of perfect clarity. During one such lucid period, 3 days into hospice, he asked me to bring him the lockbox from his closet. There's something we need to discuss, he whispered. Inside were financial documents, our wills, insurance policies, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. Bobby's hands trembled too much to hold them. I made some changes, he said, gesturing weakly. Last month, when you took that day to visit your aunt, I updated our will and changed my life insurance policy. The house is paid off now. I stared at him, confused. Paid off, Bobby. How? A ghost of his old smile. Firefighters take care of their own. The department's benevolent fund. I didn't want to tell you until it was done. I didn't want you to worry about the house after. Bobby, no. I interrupted, tears flooding my eyes. We don't need to talk about after. He reached for my hand. We do, love. I need to know you'll be okay. He gestured to the envelope. Read this when I'm gone. Promise me you'll read it alone. I nodded, unable to speak. And promise me something else, he whispered. Promise you'll rebuild. Find joy again. That's what will give me peace. I can't imagine joy without you, I said honestly. You will, he replied, with surprising strength. You're stronger than you know, Cassandra. Stronger than all of them. I didn't ask who them meant. Somehow, I already knew. The next 2 days were peaceful, filled with small, precious moments. I read to him, played our wedding music, lay beside him, telling stories of our happiest days. His colleagues came, in pairs, to say goodbye. Each one embracing me, then sitting by his bed to share memories or simply hold his hand. Bobby slipped away at sunrise on a Tuesday. One moment he was there, labored breathing filling the quiet room. The next, he was gone. I was holding his hand, telling him about the cardinal on our windowsill, his favorite bird. Maria, the hospice nurse, arrived. She helped me wash his body one final time, an ancient act of love. When the funeral home staff arrived, I kissed his forehead. Thank you for loving me, I whispered. In the terrible silence that followed, I called my parents and Stephanie. My mother answered, her voice controlled. Oh, Cassandra, I'm so sorry. Your father and I will help with arrangements. Have you called the insurance company? Not yet, Mom. He just died an hour ago. Of course, dear. But these matters need prompt attention. We'll come by this afternoon. Stephanie's response was similarly focused. I'll be right over. Do you have the policy information? I can help you make calls. Instead of accepting their offers, I called Bobby's captain. He arrived within 30 minutes. He sat with me, helped with calls, asked what Bobby had wanted. A firefighter service, I said. At the oak tree in Memorial Park, where we used to picnic. The department chaplain helped arrange everything. Bobby's colleagues crafted a beautiful service. Ceremonial bell, a final radio call, his boots and helmet displayed. The funeral home provided chairs for 50. I reserved seats in the front row for my parents and Stephanie. That evening, alone in our house for the first time, I opened the envelope Bobby had left me. Inside, a letter and additional documents. My dearest Cassandra, it began, in Bobby's careful handwriting. If you're reading this, I've gone ahead of you, which was always my greatest fear. Not death itself, but leaving you alone. But you won't be alone for long. You have too much love to give and too bright a spirit to remain solitary. There are things I need to tell you that I couldn't say while I was still with you. I've been concerned about your parents and Stephanie for some time. When I was first diagnosed, I overheard a conversation between your mother and Stephanie about my life insurance policy. A conversation they shouldn't have been having. I found Stephanie looking through our financial papers one day when you were napping. And the missing money you mentioned. I saw her take the envelope from my desk when she thought I was asleep. I didn't tell you because you needed their support, and I hoped I was mistaken. But as time passed, I became certain they were positioning themselves to benefit from my death. That's why I made changes to protect you. The house is now paid in full. My life insurance names only you as beneficiary with specific instructions that prevent anyone from accessing it except you. I've arranged for a financial advisor, Sam Wilson, whose card is enclosed, to help you manage everything. I hate leaving you with this burden of knowledge, but I needed to protect you one last time. Trust your instincts about who deserves a place in your life going forward. You deserve people who love you for your beautiful heart, not what they can get from you. All my love, forever, Bobby. Attached were bank statements showing unauthorized access attempts to our accounts, attempts made using Stephanie's email address. There were also copies of text messages between my mother and Stephanie discussing the substantial insurance payout and how to guide Cassandra towards smart investments they could help manage. As the truth of their betrayal crystallized, I also found Bobby's journal. An entry from just 2 months earlier. Cassandra doesn't see it yet, but they're circling like vultures. Her parents have called 3 times asking about my insurance. Stephanie keeps bringing up the house. They see her as an ATM they'll be able to access when I'm gone. I have to find a way to protect her without breaking her heart. That night, I wept. Not just for Bobby's death, but for the additional burden he'd carried, knowing that people who should have supported us were plotting to exploit his death instead. The following morning, I made coffee, sat on our front porch, and prepared for the funeral. For the final betrayal that I now knew, with certainty, was coming. The day of Bobby's funeral arrived, beautiful spring weather, sunshine, a gentle breeze rustling the oak leaves. I wore a simple black dress Bobby liked, the pearl earrings he gave me, his wedding ring on a chain around my neck. The funeral director, Mr. Patterson, picked me up. "Any family members riding with you?" he asked gently. "No," I replied. "They'll meet us there." At least, that's what I'd been told. My parents had promised to arrive early. Stephanie had texted, "See you tomorrow. Stay strong." We arrived 30 minutes early. Firefighters in dress uniforms were already setting up. Captain Miller approached, enveloped me in a bear hug. "We're all here for you, Cass," his voice rough. "Whatever you need. Today, or any day." As the start time approached, I kept glancing at the parking lot. No silver Mercedes. No red hatchback. The chairs filled with Bobby's colleagues, hospital staff, neighbors. The chaplain checked his watch. "Shall we wait a few more minutes?" I nodded, pulling out my phone. A text from Stephanie, sent 15 minutes earlier. "Emergency at work. Can't get away. So sorry. Call you tonight." My mother's voicemail. "Cassandra, your father's car is making a strange noise. We're going to have to turn back. So disappointing. We've called a mechanic but won't make it in time. Call us when you can." No real emergency. No serious car trouble. Just excuses. Tissue paper excuses. Delivered at the very last moment. "We should begin," I told the chaplain, slipping my phone back into my purse. As I took my seat in the front row, the emptiness beside me felt like a physical presence. 3 vacant chairs. I heard murmurs behind me, people noticing, wondering. The pitying glances were almost worse than the abandonment itself. The service began with the ceremonial ringing of a bell, a firefighter's final call. Captain Miller spoke of Bobby's bravery, his unfailing kindness. Fellow firefighters shared stories that made me laugh through my tears. Bobby's infamous chili, his knack for adopting stray animals, his endless patience. I had prepared remarks, but I wasn't sure I could make it through. When the time came, I approached the podium on surprisingly steady legs. "Bobby once told me," I began, my voice stronger than I expected, "that love isn't what you say, it's what you do. It's showing up. It's being present in the hard moments, not just the celebrations." I looked out at the sea of uniforms, at the people who had shown up, consistently, through Bobby's illness and now in his death. Each of you demonstrated that kind of love to us during the hardest year of our lives. I spoke of Bobby's courage, his humor, his complete lack of self-pity. I didn't mention the empty chairs. I didn't need to. Their absence spoke volumes. After the final prayer, Captain Miller presented me with the folded flag. People filed past, offering condolences. "If you need anything," they whispered. I thanked them, knowing most well-intentioned offers would fade. As the crowd thinned, a man I didn't recognize approached hesitantly. He had Bobby's eyes. The same cleft in his chin. "Cassandra, I'm Jason. Bobby's brother." I stared in shock. Bobby had mentioned his estranged brother once or twice, but never fully explained their conflict. "I know this is strange," Jason continued awkwardly. "We weren't in touch, but when I saw the notice, I had to come. He was my little brother." Tears filled my eyes as I embraced the stranger who carried pieces of Bobby in his face. "He would have been so glad you came." Jason glanced at the empty chairs. "Your family couldn't make it." "They chose not to," I said simply. Understanding crossed his face. "Bobby always said you were the strongest person he knew. Now I see why." At the cemetery, the final goodbye was even more intimate. Just me, Mr. Patterson, and a handful of Bobby's closest colleagues. The chaplain said a final prayer as Bobby's ashes were placed in the niche we'd chosen together. I placed a small, carved firefighter emblem beside the urn. The fire captain had arranged a reception at the station, but I couldn't face more sympathy, More questions about my absent family. Could you just take me home, Mr. Patterson? I asked. Are you sure you want to be alone tonight? He asked, genuine concern in his eyes. I'll be all right, I assured him, though I wasn't certain. As I climbed the steps to our empty house, I remembered Bobby's words from early in his illness. We'd been discussing people's discomfort with his diagnosis, how some friends had already begun to disappear. Some people can't handle the hard parts of life, he'd said. They want the wedding, but not the marriage. The birth, but not the sleepless nights. The anniversary celebrations, but not the daily work of loving someone. Don't be too hard on them, Cass. Not everyone has your strength. I thought he was being generous then. Now, I wondered if he'd been preparing me for exactly this moment. Standing alone on our porch, knowing the people who should have loved me most had failed the ultimate test of loyalty. As I turned the key, I made a decision. This betrayal would not define me. I would honor Bobby by being exactly the person he believed me to be, someone strong enough to rebuild from ashes. A week after the funeral, I was sorting through Bobby's clothes, the hardest task yet, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Stephanie standing between my parents, all three wearing appropriately somber expressions. I considered not answering. The thought of their false condolences turned my stomach. But Bobby's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, "Face it head-on, Cass. Get your closure." I opened the door without greeting them. "Darling," my mother said, stepping forward for an embrace. I remained stiff in her arms. "We've been so worried. You haven't been answering calls." "Come in," I said flatly, stepping aside. They filed into the living room. My father carried a foil-covered casserole. Stephanie clutched a small gift bag. The normalcy of it all was surreal, as if they were paying a standard condolence call, not appearing after abandoning me at my husband's funeral. "We brought dinner," my father said, placing the dish on the coffee table. "Your mother's lasagna. And this is just a little something," Stephanie added, offering the gift bag. "A remembrance necklace with Bobby's birthstone." I accepted neither. "Why are you here?" My mother looked taken aback. "Cassandra, we're here to check on you. Of course, we've been concerned. So concerned that none of you came to Bobby's funeral." An uncomfortable silence fell. My father cleared his throat. "That was unfortunate. Car trouble, as your mother explained." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't insult me with more lies." Stephanie stepped forward, her expression earnest. "Cass, I really did have a work emergency. My boss wouldn't let me leave. I felt terrible. Terrible enough to text rather than call. 15 minutes before the service." My mother sat down uninvited on the sofa. "Darling, we understand you're grieving, but there's no need for this hostility. We're here now to help you make arrangements and move forward." "Arrangements?" "Yes," my father interjected, his eyes assessing the living room. "This house is too big for just you. We think you should sell while the market is good. You could move back home until you're back on your feet." Stephanie nodded enthusiastically. "And I've been researching financial advisors for when the insurance settlement comes through. There are some great investment opportunities that could really grow Bobby's legacy." There it was. The real purpose of their visit. Not to comfort me, but to position themselves to benefit from Bobby's death. "When were you planning to discuss the insurance with me?" I asked quietly. "Before or after you pretended to care about how I'm doing?" Stephanie glanced at my parents nervously. "We just want to help you make good decisions. Grief can cloud judgment." My father leaned forward. "Have you filed the claim yet? These companies can drag their feet if you don't stay on top of them." "Actually," I said, walking to Bobby's desk and removing a folder, "I have some questions for all of you." I spread out copies of the documents Bobby had left me, the bank records showing Stephanie's attempts to access our accounts, the text messages between her and my parents discussing how to manage my expected inheritance. "Would you like to explain these?" The color drained from Stephanie's face. My mother's mouth opened and closed without sound. My father recovered first. "Where did you get these? Have you been spying on us?" Bobby found them. He knew what you were doing. That's absurd, my mother protested. We were only trying to protect you. That husband of yours was making questionable financial decisions during his illness. The medication affected his thinking. Bobby was more clear-headed on his worst day than you are at your best, I replied, my voice shaking with anger. He saw exactly who you were. Stephanie began to cry, tears that might have moved me once, but now seemed as manufactured as her friendship. Cass, you're twisting everything. We were worried about you being taken advantage of. Bobby wasn't thinking straight near the end. Is that why you took money from his desk? To protect me? She flinched. I borrowed that. I was going to pay it back. And the benefit check that disappeared from our mail. I never touched any check, she protested, but her eyes darted away. My father stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We came here to help you, and you're treating us like criminals. That firefighter filled your head with paranoid nonsense. That firefighter, I said, my voice deadly calm, was my husband. He protected me until his last breath, including from you. I pulled out the final document, Bobby's updated will and insurance policy. He changed everything. The house is paid off. The insurance policy names only me as beneficiary, with specific provisions preventing any transfers to family members for 5 years. My mother gasped. He can't do that. He did. He made sure you couldn't manipulate me when I was grieving. My father's face darkened with anger. That's gratitude for you. After everything we've done. What exactly have you done, Dad? You didn't help during his illness. You didn't even come to his funeral. He was never good enough for you. My mother blurted. A firefighter. You could have married a doctor, had financial security, social standing. Instead, you tied yourself to a man with a dangerous job and a mediocre income. The truth, finally. I almost appreciated her honesty after so many lies. Bobby was worth 100 of you, I said quietly. He understood what family really means. It's not about status or money. It's about showing up. It's about love that doesn't come with conditions. Stephanie made one last attempt. Cass, you're not thinking clearly. Grief does things to people. We care about you. We just want what's best. What's best for me is never seeing any of you again, I interrupted. Bobby left me everything I need, including the clarity to see who truly loved me and who saw me as a path to money. My father's face hardened. You'll regret this, Cassandra. When the grief passes and you're alone in this big house with all those memories, you'll need your family. I have family, I said. Not one of them is in this room. I walked to the door and held it open. Please leave my home and don't come back. Any further communication can go through my lawyer. They left in stunned silence. My mother paused at the door, tears in her eyes that might have been genuine remorse or simply the frustration of a plan thwarted. Either way, it was too late. As I closed the door behind them, a strange feeling washed over me. Not the crushing loneliness I'd expected, but something that felt remarkably like freedom. That first night after confronting them, I slept more peacefully than I had since Bobby's diagnosis. There was something clarifying about having the truth in the open, about no longer needing to make excuses for people who had never deserved my loyalty. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the window and made a decision. I would take Bobby's final gift, the freedom from financial worry, and use it to rebuild my life with intention. I returned to work part-time in the ICU. My colleagues welcomed me with understanding. Many had attended Bobby's funeral and knew about my family's absence, but no one pressed for explanations. They covered my shifts when grief hit, brought coffee, shared their own stories of loss and recovery. Captain Miller and the firefighters remained a constant presence. They mowed the lawn, fixed a leaking faucet, or just shared a meal and stories about Bobby. They became the family that had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. Bobby made us promise to look out for you, Miller told me one evening as he repaired our deck railing. But honestly, we'd have done it anyway. You're one of ours now. 3 months after the funeral, I met with Sam Wilson, the financial advisor Bobby had chosen. He helped me establish a foundation in Bobby's name, providing scholarships for children of firefighters. It felt right, honoring his legacy of service. Your husband was incredibly thorough, Sam commented. He really thought of everything to make this transition smoother for you. That was Bobby, I said, smiling through tears. Always taking care of others. As summer faded into fall, I began the painful process of going through Bobby's belongings. His flannel shirt still carried his scent. His chipped coffee mug remained on its hook. His reading glasses lay on his nightstand. I didn't rush. Some days, I could only manage a single drawer. Other days brought unexpected laughter, like discovering his collection of silly socks, or the love notes he'd hidden around our bedroom. One afternoon, while organizing his desk, I found a business card for Jason, Bobby's estranged brother, with a note in Bobby's handwriting, "Should try again someday." After hesitating for days, I called. Jason answered on the second ring. "I found your card in Bobby's things," I explained. "I thought maybe we could get coffee sometime." We met the following week. The resemblance to Bobby was even more striking in daylight. The same crinkles around his eyes when he smiled, the same thoughtful pause. "I regret not reaching out sooner," Jason said. "Our falling out was over something so stupid. Family business disagreements after our parents died." "Bobby never talked much about it," I admitted. "Sounds like him. Never wanted to speak ill of others." Jason stirred his coffee. When I saw his obituary, it hit me how much time we'd wasted. Years we can't get back. "He kept your card," I offered. "I think he wanted to reconnect too." That first meeting led to others. Jason shared stories of Bobby as a child, his fearlessness, his protective nature, his determination to become a firefighter despite their parents' objections. I found comfort in these glimpses of the man I loved before I knew him. Jason had a family of his own, a wife, Rachel, and twin boys who had Bobby's smile. They invited me for Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, incorporating me with an ease that made me realize what genuine family felt like. On the one-year anniversary of Bobby's death, I held a small memorial at our favorite spot by the lake. Jason's family came, along with Bobby's firefighter brothers and several of my nursing colleagues. We shared memories, planted a young oak tree with a simple plaque, "Robert Mitchell, beloved husband, brother, friend." His love continues to grow. That evening, alone in our house, which now felt truly mine, I opened a letter that had arrived in the morning mail. It was from Stephanie. "Cassandra," it began. "I've written this letter a dozen times over the past year. Nothing I can say will excuse what I did. Greed and envy got the better of me, and I betrayed the most important friendship of my life. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I just want you to know that losing your friendship has taught me what truly matters, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the trust one once squandered. I hope you found peace, and that Bobby's memory continues to bring you comfort." I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. It represented something important, an acknowledgement of the pain caused and the consequences of betrayal. My parents had made no such attempted amends, maintaining through mutual acquaintances that I had pushed them away during my grief. As the seasons changed, I found myself volunteering at a grief support group for young widows and widowers. Sharing my experience helped others navigate their own losses, and their stories reminded me that pain, while unique, is also universal. When spring came again, I made another significant decision. Using some of Bobby's life insurance money, I purchased a small cottage near the lake where we'd dreamed of retiring someday. The main house, our home together, I kept. I couldn't part with the walls that had witnessed our love story from beginning to end. The cottage became my weekend sanctuary, a place to hear the loons at dawn and watch fireflies at dusk, a place to feel Bobby's presence in the beauty of nature he'd so loved. "You were right," I whispered to him one evening, sitting on the dock, feet dangling in the cool water. I did find joy again. Not the same joy we had, but something new that honors what we shared. New friendships entered my life. Genuine connections formed through shared interests and mutual respect, rather than history or obligation. I became close with Maria, the hospice nurse, discovering in her a kindred spirit. I resumed nursing full-time, but switched to hospice care, drawing on my experience to comfort families navigating their own journeys through grief. The work was emotionally demanding but deeply fulfilling, allowing me to transform my pain into compassion for others. 2 years after Bobby's death, I sat on our front porch, the one where he'd promised we'd grow old together, watching a summer thunderstorm roll in. The air felt electric with possibility. The betrayal by those I trusted most had taught me painful but necessary lessons. That family isn't defined by blood, but by presence. That love is demonstrated through actions, not words. That loss, while devastating, can also be clarifying. Bobby had seen the truth about my parents and Stephanie long before I was ready to acknowledge it. His final act of protection, ensuring my financial security and independence, had given me the freedom to rebuild my life on my own terms, surrounded by people who valued me for myself rather than what they could gain. The greatest lesson I learned from losing everything was that I hadn't actually lost what mattered most. Bobby's love remained with me, not just in memories, but in the strength he'd helped me discover in myself. The ability to stand alone rather than accept conditional relationships. The courage to begin again. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal or loss, I hope my story offers some comfort. True family isn't always who we're born to. Sometimes, it's the people who show up when everyone else walks away. The colleagues who become friends. The estranged brother who becomes a lifeline. The neighbors who bring casseroles not to gain something, but simply because they care. Bobby once told me that the measure of a life well lived isn't in possessions or achievements, but in the love we give freely, expecting nothing in return. By that measure, his short life was richer than most that spanned decades longer. I still miss him every day. But now, when I think of Bobby, my first thought isn't of loss, but of gratitude for the love we shared and the lessons that continue to guide me. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I'd love to hear about someone who showed up for you when it mattered most. Tell me in the comments below.